themes encouraged an increasing number of Buddhist women to start an inner and internal Buddhist dialogue, which led 1987 to the foundation of Sakyadhita International. The noted phenomenologist of religion, Richard Gross, considers these problems in a very extensive study, mentioning as well the obvious ambivalence of Buddhism towards women, and offers the following points of discussion. In Buddhist literature, the image of women and her social understanding of her role are crucial. On one hand, women is understood as a source of desire. On the other hand, Buddhist texts seem to indicate that gender is not significant for spiritual liberation. The development of Mahayana to Tantrayana strengthens the recognition of equality, which is in contrast to other world religions. The main Buddhist insights, however, can only be united in a consistent way with a position that grants women full equality in Buddhist practice. Therefore, a realization of equality, the core of Buddhist teachings, even against the opposition of the male part of the Sangha, has to be established. In her final conclusion, Gross calls for a spiritual and social reconstruction of Buddhism, taking into consideration modern feminist critique. The exertion of religious authority, especially in the transmission of the Buddhist teaching, is in opposition to the Buddhist teaching of non-self in all appearance. The institution of the Sangha, however, belongs to this tradition. What is required is a democracy in Buddhist groups which is consistent with the question of transmission of tradition. Since traditional Buddhists establish a relation with their spiritual guides and teachers, which presupposes a wholehearted subordination, and since Buddhist countries do not use a method of textual criticism, all this leads to conflict with Western Buddhist women. These problems, however, can be overcome. All views and relations are socially constructed and are not inherently given, with the religious truth constituting the fact that they could be subject of change. In 1987, when Sakyadhita International started to empower the self-reliance of Buddhist women in East and West, a tremendous process of self-clarification among Buddhist women of the world has been initiated. For the analysis of the material presented during the Sakyadhita conferences, I have considered the following aspects. First, based on the material and records of the conference, a particular term is selected which can serve as point of reference for a religious study in which women from different traditional backgrounds can identify with. The focus of the coming together of Western and Eastern women is the demand for freedom, a freedom based on the achievement of both traditions. For this demand of freedom, the term self-determination as a keyword expressing the pattern of emancipation will be used. This term, self-determination, will be further deconstructed and analyzed, dividing female self-responsibility into secular and sacral aspects. Secular self-determination characterizes Western Buddhists, whereas sacred consciousness marks the Eastern traditions. The question obviously arises, how is the difference between secular and sacral defined, and what is the boundary? To answer this question, historical background is necessary. I think I have to shorten it a little bit, yeah. So I try to say this out of my memory. Now the thesis is that Western women have developed a secular self-determination. The feminist consciousness developed in opposition of canonical texts such as the Old Testament or the Greek Antique or the New Testament. Hildegard of Bingen and Christine de Pizan serve as good examples for protagonist attitudes. The importance of the two authors lie in the fact that inspired by these personalities, women start to raise consciously their own voice. In the case of Hildegard, it is related to the Christian doctrines, but anyhow, she tried to, she got her training in a Buddhist in a Christian background, and she tried to detach from that. Furthermore, the Renaissance author, Christine de Pizan, she was totally a secular woman, and she had a vision of the city of women. And her whole lifestyle was totally self-reliant. And feminists who followed could refer to these two women and their radical insistence on the female self-image. For example, Olympe de Gouges during the French Revolution, and later activists for women's rights during the Industrial Revolution. Anyhow, I'll make that a little bit shorter. So what these two women made very clearly is that they have a political right and to raise their voice in public. Now, Western women, based on their historical background and their secular determination, are confronted while meeting in an international Buddhist forum with the following questions. The Western women movement centers around the definition of female identity and attempts to overcome patriarchal structures of power in public life. At the same time, it is clear that modern tendencies tend to lead to a deconstruction of personality, an anchoring in a personal transcendence which could be centered around a Christian father god seems to be invalid. They ask, what could be the source and foundation of the basic sense of a self or a personality? Some women in the West seem to have found an answer in Buddhism, particularly in the concept of emptiness, shunyata, which can be considered as the central factor in Buddhism for a sacral motivated self-determination. For Western women, the sacral motivated aspect of self-determination is sometimes seen as having been lost during the process of detachment from Christian doctrines. However, this secular determination can help to visualize new dimensions which, when applied to Buddhist thoughts, can lead to new aspects of further development, and in doing so, help to overcome the limitations of the secular view. While Western women might turn to the Buddhist tradition out of the above-mentioned motivation, they carry their potential of debate and analysis to Buddhism, and thus may prove the possibilities of solutions presented and developed in Buddhism. While Western women took the initiative and interest in a Buddhist women's movement, their secularly grounded self-determination might in the process be enlarged by sacral elements of the Eastern tradition, and as a consequence, the presently existing self-determination will be changed. Should I stop? Yeah, 3 moments. Now, this was the secular part, now coming to the sacral part of the Buddhist countries. Buddhism developed like Christianity within a framework of patriarchal structures. Buddha initiated a number of reforms, among them the foundation of the first order of nuns in history, and thereby provided women in India an alternative to the existence as a housewife, mother, or daughter, spending their life in permanent dependence on the male family members. A woman living in Buddha's order can lead a life in accordance with the Buddhist philosophical doctrines based on the central concept of shunyata, the total abandonment of suffering without any contradictory attitude towards male dominance. In recent developments, traditional Buddhist women have successfully demanded the transmission of teachings, a demand that is grounded in the statements of the founder of their very religion. Now, Sakyadhita forms a forum for the unveiling of the point of intersection of secular and sacral self-determination. The mutual questioning of each other's tradition finds a common meeting ground in the forum of Sakyadhita. The components of the process of mutual inquiry is as follows. The West turns against patriarchal dominance in private and public institutions. This attitude is present in the feminist opposition towards sexual exploitation and abuse, towards exertion of power and subtle as well as openly demanded strategies of enduring submission. The reference of non-established religion in the West permits the opportunity to understand that the chosen form of life need not be controlled by men. This understanding therefore constitutes freedom from male hierarchy and interpretation of the teachings. Consequently, the new acquisition of old tradition permits a new possibility to enlarge the Western feminist movements by newly understood sacred elements. Among them are techniques of meditation, psychological theories, and philosophical thoughts. Now, in contrast, the East has a religiously motivated self-determination. Born Buddhists know since the past 2,500 years the illusionary nature of all appearance and can ground themselves. I'll finish in 2 minutes. 1 minute. 1 minute. The Buddhist teaching, however, are administered patriarchally by male-dominated institutions which automatically impose restrictions on the role of women. In order to obtain free access to the institutions, the sacred self-determination could usefully borrow from the achievements, perhaps, of the feminist movement in the West the following aspects: necessity of general education and access to studies at the universities. As consequence, independence from limited knowledge will follow. Entry into new fields of professional life to stabilize economic independence and the source of daily livelihood. For example, a profession as a fully trained Dharma teacher could provide this. Movement of women away from positions of being only donator of alms, the traditional function of laywomen, ending the role of nuns that deal without providing service for the monks, preparing meals, administration of financial resources, and so forth. For traditional female Buddhists, the revival of the nuns' order established by Buddha himself plays an important role also in regard to general human rights. Now, just the conclusion. The initiative of Sakyadhita International provides possibilities of communication and free space to encourage mutual fruition. The given aims shall be realized by strategic intentions. It can be stated that today, women in both East and West have gained a new, fresh understanding of and an approach to Buddhism. All these above-mentioned aspects will have effects on the future history of the religion of Buddhist women and the Buddhist religion itself. In this manner, Sakyadhita contributes to the global process of women's activities. It is imaginable that the cross-cultural effects of synergy can soon be evident, that new forms of Eastern, Western-oriented religiosity can arise and perhaps inspire the discussion of gender democracy in the future. It is my personal wish that the empowerment of the Sakyadhita Forum and its women will be as strong as it was in the past 15 years, and with these days lead to further insight, understanding, and inspiration here at Taipei's University. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Thea. That was really interesting. And I forgot to mention that Thea has just completed her doctoral dissertation on Sakyadhita. So that was a summary of her dissertation. Can you imagine a university is so interested in what Buddhist women are doing that it acknowledges a dissertation on the Sakyadhita movement. Another thing I forgot to mention is about time. Now, being from Hawaii and living many years in India, time is not my strong point. So we have developed a system of bells. When you have 3 more minutes, you will hear 1 bell. That was a lovely, gentle bell. And when you have 2 minutes, you will hear 2 bells. When you have 3 minutes left, 1 minute left, you will hear 3 bells. And then we'll turn off the microphone. So this will give you time to wrap up your paper. Thank you very much. Now, our next presenter is Sister Lee Sun, who comes from Cambodia. As you saw in the video today, our 5th Sakyadhita conference was held in Cambodia, and you saw the nuns chanting in the film. So we're very honored to have the president of the Association of Cambodian Nuns and Laywomen with us today. Thank you. She will speak in Cambodian.
នារីជាដើមប្រតិបត្តិប្រចាំ2ខែម្ដងដើម្បីចែកផ្សាយដោយឥតគិតថ្លៃបណ្ដាញជាតិនិងអន្តរជាតិចូលរួមសន្និបាតសិក្ខាសាលានិងព្រឹត្តិការណ៍ផ្សេងៗដែលទាក់ទងនឹងការដោះស្រាយវិវាទការស្ថាបនាសន្តិភាពបញ្ហា gender ដែលរៀបចំដោយអង្គការផ្សេងៗនេះខាងសមាគមដូនជីខាងកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំមានតួនាទីហើយនឹងធ្វើការបានប៉ុណ្ណឹងសូមជ្រាបទាំងអស់សូមអរគុណចា៎
First, let me briefly a little bit of the history of non-association in Cambodia. In Cambodia, traditionally, a great number of women having fulfilled their duties as mothers and wives. Inter-pagoda become to donji. In the past, they only served the monk as cooks and cleaners, while practicing the either or 10 precepts of the hope of serving merit to be reborn in a more fortunate positions. Likewise, Cambodian lay women went to pagodas and practiced the 5 or 8 precepts on special occasion only. Usually, the enormous potential of the marginalized group as important partners in the national reconciliation and social development process of their country had not been recognized. The Association of Nun and Lay Women of Cambodia, ANLWC, was found in May 1995. The goal of our association, first, empower donji and lay women to work for the reconciliation and development of Cambodia. 2. Promote donji and lay women to take on leadership role in society and in the long-term change gender perceptions. The achieve religious and social equality for women. The activity of the non-association are as follows. Training of trainer. The number of the provincial and district level executive committee are trained in the field of Dharma and meditation, leadership and management. Donji are trained in counseling, in particular for women, youth and children. The community work including awareness on the environment and health. Workshop on different subjects such as Dharma, meditation, and healing for women's rights are held for donji, lay women, and university students. Books relate to Buddhism, meditation, and healing, women's rights, etc. A bi-monthly newsletter for free distributions. Participants on conferences, seminars, and other events relate to conflict resolution, peace building, gender issue, etc. organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your enlightening presentation. This way we will learn something about Buddhist women from all over the world. We have a special request from our translators, that speakers, like our translator of Cambodian, Bao. Thank you very much for speaking slowly and clearly. The next presenter is Dr. Eunsu Cho, who is assistant professor at the University of Michigan in the United States. She's done a lot of research on women in Korean history and is now specializing in history of nuns. She has recently been a key leader in establishing the Center for Research on Korean Bhikkhunis. So we look forward to hearing more about her work. Thank you. Please.
I'm sorry. My paper is much more like on the historical side of Korean Buddhism in the 20th century. The title of my presentation is From Anonymity to Self-Reinvention, to be finished in 15 minutes. I will just read through the paper. Introduction. When Buddhism was introduced to Korea in the 4th century, communities of both female and male practitioners were formed. It is believed that the full ordination of nuns and monks in Korea began by the middle of the 5th century. Since then, the tradition of learning and practice by Buddhist nuns has lived on. The ability of Korean Buddhist nuns to maintain their own religious identity and monastic institutions for more than 1600 years, while at the same time participating in the formation of a Korean Buddhist identity, is remarkable and unique. In spite of their vital contributions, particularly with regards to the early formation of Buddhist orders in Korea and in Japan, Korean Buddhist nuns have yet to receive the attention they deserve from modern scholarship. One of the most compelling reasons for this is the scarcity of historiography and records by or about Korean Buddhist nuns. During the last several hundred years, anti-Buddhist policies enforced by the Joseon government from 14th century to 20th century, as well as the legal and cultural oppression of women authorized by Neo-Confucian ideology, has meant that Korean Buddhist nuns have been subjected to a double oppression as both Buddhist and as women. They have reacted to these adverse circumstances with a certain characteristic attitudes, developing different outlooks on practice. One result has been that they obscure themselves from the outside world. Many of them lived and died anonymously, without leaving behind much information about their lives. However, a preliminary study carried from biographical collections, memoirs, and the temple records produced in the 19th and 20th centuries reveals that Buddhist nuns did strive to create their own culture and meaning. In contrast to their invisibility within the historiography of modern Korean Buddhism, the Buddhist nuns were actively engaged in attempts to create a positive and constructive self-image of themselves and of Buddhist practice. In this presentation, I would like to focus on two remarkable Bhikshunis, Buddhist nuns. I hope that despite the anecdotal nature of the material I was able to gather, this account will give you a glimpse into the lives of Korean Buddhist women, Korean women teachers, how they lived, practiced, and trained their students. First, Myori Boppi Snim. Snim means venerable monks and nuns. The period from the late 19th to the early 20th century was a time when Korean Buddhism was modifying and restructuring itself against social change. As such, it could be viewed as a missing link between traditional Korean Buddhism and its later development from the Japanese colonial period, 1910 to 1945 onward. It was at this time that Buddhist society began to change its religious and social outlook and to develop a new agenda that would help create a positive self-image after centuries of repression by the Confucian-influenced Joseon dynasty. Boppi Snim was born in 1887 in a rural area in the southern part of Korea. Not much is known about her family background except that she was a second daughter. However, based on the story of how she entered the Buddhist order, we can tell that she was born into a humble family. When she was 3 years old, her father died. With the head of the household gone, her family must have gone through a great deal of difficulty. When Poppy became 4 years old, her grandmother carried on her back to a small hermitage. Her mother also came to the hermitage at the time where she ordained as a nun under the name of Tochon. After 1 year, Poppy's mother felt that living with her daughter would not benefit either of them, and she moved to another monastery, Kapsa, on the other side of the mountain. It was only when Donghaksa, where she studied the Buddhist scriptures and the discourse records of Chan masters. Poppy began studying the Lotus Sutra in a monastery in the southeastern part of Korea under the guidance of Master Kobong, a renowned doctrine master. Hearing from Kobong about his own teacher, Manggong, she resolved to meet and study with Manggong. It is said that as Poppy was nearing Cheonghesa Monastery, where Manggong was teaching, Manggong had a vision of her coming and came down to greet her outside of the entrance of the mountain gate. Under Manggong's guidance, Poppy's practice accelerated even further. While meditating during an intensive retreat, she experienced the opening of her vision. Upon hearing this news, Manggong praised her, granting her another Dharma name, Myori, and a poem of certification for her awakening. This took place in 1916 when Poppy was only 30 years old. Another incident further illustrates the kind of some practice she engaged in under the guidance of Manggong. It takes place when Manggong was teaching at Sudoksa, so it probably occurred sometime after 1905, the year Manggong began accepting students. On that day, the Dharma talk was drawn from Kongan, Kungan in Chinese, about Mahakashyapa's flag pole from the book The Gateless Gate, case 22. At the end of the Dharma talk, Manggong tossed out a question to the audience around him on the story. Breaking the audience silence, a nun rose quietly and said, "While a fish is swimming around, the water gets clouded. While a bird is flying in the blue sky, a feather is falling down." Manggong looked around and uttered, "Peach blossoms are floating in the white snow." Manggong then calmly asked, "Where are the fluttered blossoms?" The same nun came forward again and said, "Now that the snow has melted, there is only a patch of soil." Manggong praised Poppy thus, "You have gotten that piece of soil." The story also shows that Korean Buddhist Sun tradition, Chan tradition, in the 20th century faithfully and strictly followed the old and famous Chan Buddhist tradition of Dharma exchange, a practice which has been popularized during the Sung dynasty in China as a Hwadu method, and which has been subsequently transmitted to Korea. Manggong is a key figure in the emergence of 20th century women masters in Korea. He is the first male master in modern Korea who has received bhikshunis as his own students and trained them in some practice and certified them as some masters. Manggong's teaching and the training of these elite Buddhist nuns led to a revival of tradition, learning, and some meditation among Buddhist nuns in modern Korea. This, in turn, contributed greatly to a restoration of the Buddhist Bhikshuni order in Korea. Even after her experience of awakening, Poppy did not deviate from her usual schedule of working in the yard during the day and sitting for meditation in the evening. Most of the time, she practiced silence. She also traveled widely to other monasteries and training centers to meditate and teach disciples throughout the rest of her life. After more than 50 years of teaching and training, she returned in 1966 to Gyeonsang-am of Deoksung Mountain, part of Sudoksa Monastery, where she attained her awakening. There, she gathered enough bhikshunis and resources to build a bhikshuni-only monastery complex. For the next 10 years, she functioned as the complex headmaster and devoted herself to training disciples. She gained an impressive reputation and enormous respect as a Sun master, both amongst her own disciples and from other Sun masters. The most eminent Sun masters would visit her for traditional Chan-style Dharma exchange. Her efforts to institutionalize the training and the practice of bhikshunis was realized by the establishment of the Gyeonsang-am Meditation Center, which became the first bhikshuni Sun meditation retreat center in the modern period. Indeed, Poppy faithfully followed her teacher Manggong's lifetime wish, that is, the bhikshus and the bhikshunis who want to follow the path of our great teacher, the Buddha, and accomplish awakening should seek to practice and meditate in an ideal environment. There are 3 essential elements for practitioners: a place for Dharma practice, a Dharma teacher, and good Dharma friends. Poppy devoted the rest of her life to establishing a religious community of bhikshunis where true practice could be accomplished. With her effort, monastic training centering on some practice became a basis of Korean bhikshuni tradition. One day, the elderly Poppy casually asked her disciples, "Would fall be better or spring?" They all unanimously replied, "Of course, spring is better." Then the master said, "The day I'm leaving will be the same as the day I came." 3 days before she passed, Poppy gathered her followers. Bodies are coming and going, but with the Dharma body, there is no going or coming. She died on the day she has been brought to a monastery on her grandmother's back 85 years before. Next, Haechun Sunim. Bhikshuni Haechun Sunim lived 30 years later than Poppy Sunim. She was born in 1919 in the middle of the Japanese occupation. Haechun Sunim's father was a judge in the northern province of Korea. After graduating from high school, the highest level of education most girls could aspire to at that time, she prepared for the typical life of a woman of that time. She married a local county magister, bore him 4 children, and was leading the comfortable life of an ordinary housewife when war broke between South and North Korea in 1950. Her husband was kidnapped to North Korea and not knowing his whereabouts, she began to wonder about the meaning of life. Eventually, she came to find refuge in Buddhism. Although these beginnings might seem pedestrian, her unusual and extraordinary character can be seen in the intensity of her meditation practice and the determination to attain awakening she displayed upon entering the monastery. For example, having practiced some meditation for a few years, Haechun decided to visit Master Seongcheol, the most renowned Sun master of that time. Master Seongcheol was living as a recluse in Cheonjae-gul at that time and rarely received visitors. Famous for having lived most of his life in a hermitage surrounded by fans, he was and still is one of the most publicized and mystified Sun master in modern Korean Buddhist history. As the patriarch of the Choge order of Korean Buddhism for the 2 decades that preceded his passing, Seongcheol came to represent the spiritual realm of the Korean Buddhist order. He was also notorious for having extreme prerequisites for those young students inspired to seek a meeting with him. Haechun arrived at Songcheol's hermitage. He indicated that he did not want to take her as his student and wanted her to leave. Although she has to leave the room, she refused to leave the hermitage. Later that day, she came back and asked to have another audience with Songcheol through the novice monk who was his attendant. Songcheol refused. It was getting dark outside. The deep valley of the mountain where the hermitage located was getting cold as it was midwinter. Haechun sat down on the pine tree near the hermitage, immovable. Suddenly, Songcheol approached and poured a bucket of water over her in that night of a freezing winter. She did not move at all. Time passed. Worried, the novice came by and offered her a blanket, but she refused. She said, "I now am entering my winter retreat. If I live here, I will live. If I freeze to death here, then I will die." She resolved to enter her own meditation retreat there. After 7 days, Songcheol delivered a message to her. "If you go to Seongjusa and finish 100,000 prostrations, I will accept you as my disciple." She went off right away and finished the prostrations in only 1 week. That was how her relationship with him as the master of her life began. It's almost the end. The rest of her life consists of a continuous some meditation retreats, 36 summer sessions in total. Most importantly, she also contributed to relief activities for those in need. Most importantly, by devoting herself to teaching and training Bhikshuni students, she worked to restore the Bhikshuni training tradition that has been dormant for the past 500 years. In 1968, she founded the Udambara Association, which became the national organization of Korean Buddhist nuns in 1985. She was the first president of the Haechun of the organization. Concluding remarks. In the contemporary religious landscape of Buddhist society in Korea, nuns are equal and indispensable partners for monks, regardless of whether or not they are acknowledged as such. They receive full ordination as monks do. In the past, Buddhism was almost entirely a man's world. Nowadays, radical changes has been taking place thanks to the pioneer women masters discussed earlier. In contemporary Korea, nuns are not only equal in numbers with Korean monks, but they have also proven themselves to be active participants in the tradition in various capacities, as avid meditators, compassionate caretakers for the needy, organized administrators of social welfare facilities, attentive and powerful leaders for city-based Buddhist centers, and organizers and demonstrators in rallies demanding democracy, whether within the Jogye order or against prejudices in the media or government. For these many reasons, the Society of Korean Buddhist Nuns deserves serious attention from scholars, not only in the Western world, but also in Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and so Dr. Cho. All of these inspiring examples of Buddhist women. Our next speaker is Dr. Bhikshuni Kusuma Devendra. Kusuma was a well-known teacher of Buddhism in Sri Lanka before she became a nun. She completed her first dissertation on the history of Buddhist nuns in Sri Lanka, which was rejected because some of the ideas that she put forth were too radical for her time. The second dissertation, I'm happy to say, was accepted. She became a bhikkhuni in the first ordination of Sri Lankan nuns in recent history, which was held in Sarnath in 1996, and the ordination masters were Koreans. So Kusuma, please share with us your ideas.
It's not coming. Thank you, Venerable Lecture Somo. I have so much to say, I even don't know where to begin. So I have to be very brief also, talking about Buddhist women in Sri Lanka. To begin with, Buddhist women in Sri Lanka have been quite a force, not just recently, but in the long, long past, when Buddhism reached Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC. And the women were very progressive. They were equal to the monks. They were the arahants. And they were well received by the state and monks and lay society. Our entire archaeological history shows the prominence of not only the monks, but of the nuns, and also the women. It appears that in Sri Lanka, when Mahinda brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka, the first to attain stages of sainthood was Anula, a woman, not a man. So it started like that. And then she invited Sanghamitta, and then with the arrival of Sanghamitta, 1,000 women entered the order. It says that under pomp and glory, the very place where the Bo sapling was planted, with so much the kings and princes, because this was royalty who entered the order, and they started off very well. And the women of Sri Lanka were very educated. The nuns were educated, and they spoke the Dhamma, they spoke the Abhidhamma. And we hear of the temple and the tank. The temple and the tank was their only interest. The men and the women, they worked in their fields during the day. In the evening, they came to the temple. And there were the monks and the nuns. And they listened to the Dhamma and they practiced meditation. Even the lay women. I hear when the lay women get together at the well or some place, they only talk the Dhamma. And they ask each other, "Sister, what is your meditation?" Then they reply, "My meditation is this, vipassana, samatha, or metta bhavana." And they congratulate each other. "Oh, we are very fortunate. You are fortunate to become a real daughter of the Buddha." If by any chance a woman said she was not doing any meditation, then the other women get round her and scold her and blame her. "Your life is of no use. You are as good as dead." And they would teach her a meditation then and there to practice. So this was the beginning of our history, 2,500 years ago, maybe 300 years. And then the women, and Sri Lanka was known as the granary of the East, because these men and women were so pious and they worked so hard at their fields, and their economic situation grew. And they were a rich nation. And that's how we have got those wealth of archaeological reserves, the Anuradhapura era. And that was the golden era of Sri Lanka. And that was the time the bhikkhunis were alive and walking the earth. In Sri Lanka, we had thousands of them. But gradually, the women of Sri Lanka lost their place. Not only the women, even the men and the monks. The bhikkhuni order deteriorated with the northern, the Pandyans, the South Indian invasions came upon the northern part of Sri Lanka, and soon Anuradhapura, the seat of all the civilization, was overthrown, and weak kings and many other problems, and Buddhism eventually, after 10 centuries, almost disappeared. And then, but as was told by some of them in the morning, Sri Lanka left its mark, the women left its mark when in the 5th century, they took the bhikkhuni order to China. And in China, they made a mark. It was crossing the dangerous seas and in sailing boats. For 3 months, they weathered and they died in China. They never returned. And they learned the Chinese language and gave them the ordination. Sri Lankan ordination has gone to China. And from there, it has spread to Japan, Korea, Taiwan. It's our ordination. Here again, I think Sri Lanka has made a mark. But Sri Lanka itself lost. In the ensuing years, we find with the loss of Buddhism, with the loss of monks and nuns, Sri Lanka deteriorated to a great extent. And then we were under domination of the Portuguese, Dutch, and the British. And Buddhism almost disappeared. The women started taking names, and Christianity became a flourishing business, because you can get a job only if you were a Christian, and if you had given up your Sri Lankan name and you took over their name, and that kind of thing. And then our immediate history now I am talking about is something to be pitied about. And soon we lost our position, the women, men. Fortunately, I must say, the British gave us the English language. I told Dr. Palmo, isn't that wonderful that we can at least communicate this much? And somehow we resurrected ourselves up to a certain extent in the maybe 200-300, the last 200-300 years. And the bhikkhu order was resurrected. There were no bhikkhus. The bhikkhu order disappeared as well. And we had to resurrect the bhikkhu order from Thailand and Burma. And that's the order that is now flourishing. Not very long ago, maybe 200-300 years. But the bhikkhuni order could not be resurrected. There were no bhikkhunis also. This is another thing. And so, in the recent past, I have to talk about the women of the recent past, the present generation. The freedom, self-determination of women, could I say, or men also, is almost gone with this. You know, you may be knowing that we had 15 years of a terrorist war in the north. And this destroyed the little culture that was left behind, I must say. And now the Sri Lankan population is confused. Buddhism, there is no time to practice Buddhism. Technology and materialism has caught up badly. And Buddhism has receded. It's only in the name. People are born Buddhist, of course. But whether they practice, whether they know, is a question. But we still have pockets of them. We have so many meditation centers and so many learned monks. They are very learned in Pali and Buddhism. But whether they give the message of the Buddha is another question. The Buddhism is not practiced as it would have been in the ancient past. It is only a scholarly recension, only limited to books and theory. There is no practical application as such. I think this economic crisis is mostly playing upon people of Sri Lanka. They are not free. They have to run the day long just to get their material comforts. When I visited Australia, Germany, even Dubai, I found people are more relaxed, they are economically stable, and they are able to practice Buddhism in much more effective way. I even said there are no Buddhists in Sri Lanka, but I find them here in these countries. Sri Lankans who have migrated under this crisis and who are living abroad, and even Westerners, I find. These little pockets where they practice meditation, they really like to live the Dhamma, to attain the heights of our ancients, to attain purity of conduct, purity of the mind, and also to reach up to sainthood. Sri Lanka has a little bit of it in seclusion in meditation centers all over the world. All over Sri Lanka we have these meditation centers, and the women of Sri Lanka, I must say, by and large, have not lost their intrinsic values, and most of the women, maybe 90% who patronize the temples are women. 90% who patronize the monks are women, maybe 99%, very few men. These women are always listening to the Dhamma, and over the radio, over the mass media, we have so many sermons being given. But I wonder how much of it is effective, how much of it is lived. And this is the present situation of the women in Sri Lanka. Of course, they support the monks, and as you may guess, the monks are now 200-300 years, whereas the nuns order, the 10 precept nuns are only 100 years, and they were not recognized at all. The 10 precept nuns were marginalized. They were not lay people, they were not monks, because they were not ordained. So they lost on both sides. And the monks came to have this, what did I say, this discrimination and this patriarchal dominance, that kind of word we need to use, because that has been the way with Sri Lanka. The mass media, and this is funny but true, I as a laywoman was on the mass media, but not anymore. This is the situation. So I don't want to go into open confrontation, because it is too much. I feel satisfied that I have got this much. And of course, the present bhikkhunis must prove themselves and make an effect, some impression on the present society, and it is a battle to be won. I think the international community is with us. Again and again I come, and again I am encouraged to see you all. I am not alone in this battle. So we feel so confident that in the near future, maybe there is a time when the bhikkhunis will gain ground and will feel themselves felt. And this international arena is something very important for us. I must remember Venerable Sister Kema, Ayya Kema, who first gave me this idea and asked me to come for this inaugural meeting at Buddha Gaya. That made everything different for me, my whole life. And the next thing that impressed me was translating Daughters of the Buddha, Sakyadhita, and where Venerable Lekshe Soma was editing. And that gave me insights which I had never known. So by the time I had done a research on the nuns of Sri Lanka, I only knew it was a hopeless situation. I only knew that they had no chance, and that's how I started talking about the bhikkhunis, and I had no place. And somehow I even cannot imagine how I came up to this situation. From the depths of despair of the nuns, the 10 precept nuns, we have reached up to this place is quite creditable. So at the present, of course the lay women are always with us, in the sense that most of them they don't know the difference between the monk and the nun. Those who know, maybe they support the monks better. Anyway, they support the monks better, they are very powerful. But recently I have found this, that the poorer women in the village, they like the nuns better, because the nuns are easier to support. They need less food, less dana, and they are not so demanding. And also they can come closer to the nuns. And then they come, this kind of proselytization that is going on, the Christians taking over and converting women, and also like helping women with maybe counseling and holding pujas when there is death, so many deaths because their sons died in the war. And these women, they come to the temple, to the nuns, and we hold pujas, and we help them with counseling according to the Dhamma. So the nuns are becoming more popular at that level. And then I must congratulate Ranjani. She's now helping the nuns to learn how to do some social service, so that the nuns become more integrated with the society. And the women find it easier to meet the nuns. But still it's not enough, because the nuns themselves lack monastic training. They have no training centers where they can be a sort of what I would see in Taiwan and Korea, where they are very well established in their monastic training, which we lack. I think that discipline is most important. I must put this as a problem to this international forum, to provide us with monastic training, a proper place where we really get the discipline and also the knowledge and also meditation, not only the outward discipline. Meditation up to a point is working, because actually the meditation centers some of these nuns and women, most of the women go for meditation. And there they practice sunyata, not only that, the sublime states, and they understand the Dhamma because we are very close to Pali. We even read the Pali language. So we understand the Dhamma itself. But my worry is not the understanding of it, but the application of it in daily life, every moment. Because that is the thing that can effect a change in the hearts and minds of the world. So we have to give very strong emphasis to this kind of thing. And while I would not confront the monks and lay society to an extent, for it could become more complicated, but I am taking a path of least resistance. But I am doing a kind of work where we go on with our mental. I am staying in the meditation center, and thousands of women come for instruction. So while we have to yet go for monastic training centers, a dual process of meditation and training, I think will soon put us back, and we will get what we expect to in the future. And I hope, and maybe I will just note of I would say that the women, they say that if you have to be equal to a man, you have to be 3 times as good, and that is not difficult. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bhikkhuni Kusuma, for your subversive activities. Our last speaker at the first session is Shamanerika Tenzing Datun from Bhutan. She has been studying in India for the last 7 years and training at Jamyang Chiling Institute near Dharamsala. So we welcome you.
Respected venerables and sisters, first of all, I would like to thank you all for giving me an opportunity to talk in front of you all. To say a few words about the nuns of Bhutan. Like in Bhutan, we have quite a number of nunneries, and each nunnery has about 40 to 50 nuns. Except for the 2 government-sponsored nunneries, the rest of the nunnery are supported by private donations offered by the local people. As a whole, the nuns do not get an opportunity to study like the monks do. But the nuns do learn to read, so they are able to read and memorize prayers and the scriptures recited for the sick and for the people who have died, and also to clear away the obstacles. When people offer money for special pujas, like the rituals and prayer ceremonies, the money is kept to be used for the nunnery for food and other necessities. When the nuns are invited to conduct prayers in private homes, they are allowed to keep the money for their own use. The nuns know how to read and some know how to write, but very few understands the meaning of the text they are reciting, which is very much for the practice of the Buddhism. The nuns in the 2 government-recognized nunneries receive only ₹200 per month for the food and other necessities, but that is not sufficient, so they must find additional support in order to eat and build their own housings. The nunneries in Bhutan are built very far away from towns and roads, so the nuns have to walk for an hour or two, and sometimes even for a whole day to get the supplies. The nuns have no intensive study program, but their day typically begins from 4 in the morning and continues until 9 in the evening. Most nuns get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and start memorizing the prayers used for the pujas. Between 6 and 7:30, they gather for the morning prayers. After 1 hour for breakfast, they gather for prayer again until 12 noon, with just a very short break. After 1 hour for lunch, they again start to practice their religious musical instruments and rituals until 3 p.m. Then they have prayers until 9 in the evening, after which they go to their own rooms and prepare dinner. Most of the nuns do not eat lunch because they have not much time to cook in the afternoon. Instead, they drink tea and take some small snack with it. During the sacred months and on the days they practice the fasting rituals, which is called Nyungni in Tibetan, and recite the mantras of the different meditational deities for a month or longer. These days, most of the nuns have begun to understand the importance of education, and many have gone to India to study Buddhist philosophy. I'm among those who is studying in India, and I've been studying in Tamil training for nearly 9 years. I think that's all. Thank you.
We have time for perhaps 1 or 2 questions before break for tea. If anyone would like to ask a question of any of our panelists. Yes.
And little by little, there was a change of heart. And now I find, I'm staying in Colombo 7, I find the rich ladies in Colombo. Most of them have taken to meditation. This is a very good sign. So though the war left its signs of deterioration, along with it came a change of heart. Good question. I think we are picking up in that way. Only if there is more life and relaxation and the war is over and people become normal and economically they prosper, I think Buddhist, Sri Lanka will pick up again. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question to Dr. Tia Moore. I'm Maria Abito of the Museum of World Religions. I found it very interesting what you said about Sakyadhita in terms of intersection of secular and sacred self-determination. And you mentioned what the West learns from the East, which is techniques of meditation and psychology and also the study of texts. And my question is, I didn't get your conclusion. Do you conclude that women who are socially, so I wonder if this is something that also is something in your experience, or do you see that women tend to become Buddhists?
To summarize your question a bit, she is asking Dr. Tia about the intersection between secular activity and sacred activity. How do we integrate? What is your conclusion about how Western women, are you concerned with Western women?
Yes.
Yes, how Western women.
She started speaking from the Christian background first, and then what happens?
Okay.
This is not among my conclusions because 15 years are quite short in the history of this Buddhist movement. But however, it can happen, and it happens to a number of the contributors to the conferences, that some are going back or tracing their own religious roots. And if this is combined with an enlargement of experience, meaning to say that Western women come with a secular background and enlarge their experience by the sacred motivation of Buddhism, then going back to their own roots would be totally different. Is that an answer to your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
One last question.
I have a question to Kusuma Devendra. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce it. From Sri Lanka. I think I just listening to your talk and I asked my neighbor, and so I was wondering where the Sri Lankan non ordained which tradition, because I believe in many political regions Sri Lankan monk do not accept lineage, and she told me she ordained from Korean monk. It is true. And then how the Sri Lankan monk react for your ordination? Do they accept your ordination or not?
Your question is very important, whether we are accepted or not. We did get, the first ordination was for us through the Korean Sangha, and we ever look up to them. But the trouble here is the hierarchy. Not all the monks. The hierarchy is in Sri Lanka very dominant, and they sit over the Buddhist, the ministry of Buddha Sasana. So the ministry has no chance to take a decision on the nuns without the sanction of the hierarchy. So now the hierarchy does not give that sanction, with the result the state does not recognize the bhikkhunis. So it all boils down to this fact. If only the state will patronize, then we have nothing to worry. And that must be with the collaboration of the monks. So, but while the general public, the monks are with us, we still are not formally recognized.
Okay.
We will be discussing this question in further detail in the coming days. So please keep your questions and enjoy your tea. We'll meet back here again at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Venerable Shikan Ching wanted me to remind you that we have plenty of refreshments out there, so please enjoy yourself. And also here we would like to acknowledge Venerable Heng Ching's help for today's conference here, and also her anonymous disciple who has taken over the expenses, for our conference here today. So we would like to thank them all for doing that. Okay, we can move now to the refreshments, please.
Part of our panel on understanding Buddhist women around the world. We have 6 panelists here this afternoon, and they come from 4 different countries. And we have 2 panelists who come from Nepal, where our last Sakyadhita conference was held. And I would like to briefly introduce the first speaker this afternoon to you. She is Dr. Nivedita Kumari Mishra from Nepal. She is a lecturer in the Department of Sanskrit at the Tribhuvan University in Kathmandu, Nepal. And she will speak to us today about the duties and lifestyles of Buddhist women in Neva Buddhism, which is prevalent in the Kathmandu Valley. And if you would like to say a few words of introduction about yourselves, since I don't have all the information, please do so.
Thank you. Thank you, and namaste, all of you. I am Nivedita, and I teach in Sanskrit. I teach in university, Tribhuvan University, and I teach Buddhist studies too. That's all. I have done PhD in Buddhism, in Vajrayana, and I am working I'm working and doing research, more research, and on the topic of Buddhism, on the different topic of Buddhism, related to, of course, Mahayana Buddhism, and again related to Sanskrit-based Mahayana Buddhism. And my paper is, now I'm going to present the paper which is related to Nepalese women who belong to a particular society which is called Neva Society, and they are the Aborigine of Nepal, and they are Buddhist practitioners, and they practice the philosophy of Buddhism through rituals. So even the lay person can understand the philosophy, the core philosophy of Buddhism through small and easy ritualistic methods. Thank you. I must proceed with my paper. Thank you. Buddhist lay women in Nepal. Buddhist thought highlights the moral character of men and women both, but women are the pivot around whom practical and religious societies revolve. They play important roles regarding the development and preservation of social and religious values. The flow of Buddhism in past centuries and even today is the outcome of devotional and honest effort of not only men but women too. We have found numerous jatakas and avadans filled with those stories which reveal the contribution of women in exhilarating the notion of Buddhism among more and more people. The women in Nepal also have been remained involved in the preservation and development of Buddhism since Lichvi era, a royal dynasty which belonged to 300 AD to 800 AD. The historical and religious ups and downs are mentioned in the valuable ancient scriptures, yet they are not related to the present political map of Nepal. It is the historical fact that the Kathmandu Valley was known as Nepal till the date of 17th century, when all kingdoms spread around near and far from the Kathmandu Valley till the Indian and Chinese border were unified and given the name Nepal by His Majesty Prithvi Narayan Shah. The inscriptional evidences found inside the valley related to the events of Nepal, of course the valley, present the vivid descriptions of its cultural and religious society. Henceforth, the word Nepal will signify only the Kathmandu Valley. Earlier traces of Buddhism in Nepal. On the basis of inscriptional and epigraphical evidences, the history of Nepal goes back to the 5th century AD. Yet, various scholars have come to the conclusion that Buddhism entered into the Kathmandu Valley well before 4th century AD. The inscriptional evidences belonging to Lichvi era reveal the concept that Mahayana Buddhism was in vogue during those periods inside the valley. Early Buddhist scriptures, mostly Mahayanic, the Nav Granthas, there are 9 Granthas which reveal the Mahayanic notions. I have given the names in the footnotes, which are kept and cared with full respect from generation to generations in Buddhist community Nevar, are all composed in Sanskrit language, the dominant media of Mahayana Buddhism, and mention of those auspicious scriptures in the inscriptions during Lichvi regime confirm that Mahayana Buddhism entered in the valley in its early phases. Mahayana continued flourishing and expanding along with Vajrayana, a developed branch of Mahayana, to 12th century AD, while by this time Vajrayana overspread in the valley in the form of Tantra, though Vajrayana was not unknown even during Lichvi period too. There are evidences found inside Kathmandu Valley of women's involvement in the Buddhist practices during those era too. Not only the Bhikshuni Sangh were there, but there are other inscriptions also which focus on the fact that the lay women were similarly active during those days, Lichvi period, in the propagation and preservation of Buddhism by supporting Sangha through donations and thereby getting merits and prosperity for their family members and entire creatures of the world. In the process of categorizing the members of Sangha, it is pointed out that Upasakas and Upasikas are the men and women who combine their observance of the Dharma teachings with the householders' responsibilities. Princess Bhrikuti, the another prominent figure of ancient, used to venerate them with great sincerity. That's why she could not part with them when her marriage proposal was settled. She took priceless Buddhist images as her dowry to Tibet and propagated Buddhism, the early phase of Vajrayana Buddhism, through the medium of meritorious deeds such as temple constructions, wholeheartedly thus earning the name of White Tara. The internal inscriptions found inside the valley and the external historical evidences, such as mentioned in Tibetan histories, confirm the gradual pavement of early Buddhism towards later Buddhism, that is Vajrayana, inside the valley. In due course of time, Vajrayana got a strong footing here and continued to flow till death. Newar Buddhist Society. Along with men, women also participate moral precepts and follow the doctrinal theme of Mahayana through various rites and rituals in Newar Buddhist Society of Nepal. Since the paper is mainly related to the Buddhist practice of Newar Society, a brief introduction of Newar Society is needed here. The Newar Society mainly follows either Buddhism or Hinduism. Buddhist Newar Society consists of two wings, the Upasak and the Bare, the Buddhist practitioners. Bare is the colloquial term for Buddhist practitioners. The Bare class is the highly revered group in Newar Buddhist community. Vajracharyas and Shakya are the two prominent groups who are considered the spiritual guides of the lay people, or they are called Bare also. They are also called Gubhaju. Guru, the teacher. Bhaju is the address by lay Buddhists of this particular community. Vajracharyas are the married Buddhist practitioners. The word Vajracharya itself signifies that their religious status is related to the rituals and philosophy of Vajrayana. The Vajracharyas, only having got Vajra master's initiation, can act as a priest for Buddhist laity. Theirs is the only whose primary identity is a tantric priest. It is natural that getting married is essential for them. Shakyas are the another almost equally revered group of Newar society. There is not much difference between Shakya and Vajracharyas except Acharya initiation, which is especially given to Vajracharyas only. Shakya also can have this initiation on their own, but however, they cannot be recognized as a priest. Newar, either Hindu or Buddhist, are mostly confined to the Kathmandu Valley. In this connection, it should be noted that Buddhist women of Nepal are the Buddhist women of Newar society residing in the valley. There exists other Buddhist society apart from Newar, but this paper will focus on the observances followed by Newar Buddhist women, for widely Buddhism in Nepal means Buddhism in Newar society. The theme of Mahayana advocates the idea of Bodhisattva, who embodies the highest state of wisdom and compassion, in which all sexual and social discriminations have been eliminated. Every being, whether male or female, ordained or lay, is considered a potential Buddha. Every sentient being thus possesses Buddha nature. Buddha nature is termed as Prabhaswar in Sadharma Pundrik Sutra. Prabhaswar, the word, it is the Sanskrit word. The word stands for shining light. Shining light or clear light is self-cognizant. It has no form and is dharmakaya. Dharmakaya is the mind aspect of Buddha. Shunyata Pravasa form is fully discussed in Tathagat Garv, which is considered as great Madhyamik. The meaning of clear light is self-cognizant and unfabricated original wakefulness primordially present in the mind of the sentient beings of three realms. The thought relevant to this theme is depicted through the verses of Upay Kaushal Parivarth of Sadharma Pundrik, where the Lord says, he wishes that all the sentient beings may acquire all the 32 specialities and become the self-cognizant knower of the true nature of the world and the self-originated. Mahayana thus emphasizes on the theme that any being who follows the moral precepts and do meritorious deeds can acquire Buddhahood, for he or she or any creature possesses Buddha nature. It will be clear in following lines that the Vajrayana is a branch of Mahayana, thus it also incorporates the notion that every individual possesses Buddha nature. Since Newar Buddhism is dominated by Vajrayana Buddhism, the basic tenets needs to be elucidated here for Buddhist women's religious performance regarding the various observances are the ritualized form of Vajrayana Tantra. As Vajrayana is a branch of Mahayana, it incorporates its basic philosophy. Parmita Nay, Parmita Path, and Mantra Nay, Mantra Path are the two subdivisions of Mahayana way of Buddhism. The practice of five perfections leads towards the supreme perfection, Pragya Parmita, perfect knowledge, and this is the ultimate goal of Parmita Nay. Whereas attaining ultimate truth through the practice of holy mantras, recitations, mudra, seal gesture, and yogic practices, meditations are the method of Mantra Nay. The method of Parmita Nay might take uncertain time to attain Buddhahood. The latter holds quicker method to obtain nirvana even in one life. It is accessible, however, only to those people who possess higher caliber. Parmita Nay as cause and Mantra Nay as effect go together for attaining emancipation in Vajrayana. The term Vajrayana and the philosophy which revealed by this system is defined in various tantric works. Vajra, the word, is defined in Advaya Vajra Sangraha as Dridham. Should I recite the Sanskrit term or not? Okay. Dridham sar adahi avinashi cha shunyatam vajram uchyate, and in Gyan Siddhi bodhi chittani bhavet vajram, and bodhi chitta is defined in He Vajra Tantra as shunyata karuna dvaya swabhavam bodhi chittam. Thus it can be viewed that Vajra voidness and bodhi chitta are synonyms. Furthermore, chitta comprises voidness and compassion, and this linkage establishes the theory that along with Sunyata doctrine, the thought of universal compassion is also adopted by Tantric Buddhism. However, the compassion for all being was also not an advent of Tantric Buddhism, for early treatises of Buddhism are full of those thoughts which are aimed towards the liberation of all creatures of world and not only the bodhisattvas. Buddhism in Nepal, especially in Newar society, is living through Tantric Buddhist rituals. The spiritual leaders and the followers both are engaged in religious observances. Okay, I should exceed. A good number of rituals related to Buddhist deities are performed by the lay women and by the wives of Vajracharya and Shakya under the guidance of the priest. They offer puja to particular tantric deities and follow the moral precepts described in Buddhist scriptures. The observances are denoted fortnight of the month of Ashwin, October. Vasundhara, as a member of Ratnasambhav family, has all the characteristics of Ratnasambhav Tathagat. Ratnasambhav means okay, the Vasundhara personified as the purified form of the feeling aggregates. She becomes the symbol of earth for whom every body and everything is equal. So the Newar people worship for her prosperous day of the bright fortnight of every month. Tara is said to be the pragya of Buddha, a Moksh Siddhi. She is the embodiment of air element and dhan. She belongs to Karma family. Tara worship is very much similar to the sadhana process of visualizing Tara prescribed. Okay.
Microphone.
Actually, the paper is related to the observances and the importance of observances. So I have to say some few words. I mean, the conception of Dash Kushal Karma is different from the Dash Kushal Karma prescribed in the Dash Bhumik Sutra.
I have to stop here, but thank you so much, Dr. Mishra, for the very detailed and interesting content of your paper, and I hope that maybe you could make it available to those who need some more time to read through it, and I would be one of them, very interested in your paper.
Okay, thank you.
So thanks a lot. Our second speaker this afternoon is the Venerable Dhamma Vijaya from Nepal. She is a PhD candidate at Magadha University in Bodh Gaya, India. And she will speak to us this afternoon about Buddhist nuns in Nepal.
First, I will homage to Buddha. After that, Venerable Karmalakya, and today the program manager, and all the participants, Venerable and sisters and brothers. I feel today I am very peace and great for everybody as being a, because in this world now we have something weak, something unfavorable word, like we don't have the same, as like always we feel it in this first session also there is a lot of about talking Kusuma, Sister Venerable Kusuma and other things. This make all of us in our mind little bit something pains. That point we must have to take as our like a duty. Today my introduction, I am from Nepal. My name is Dhamma Vijaya. Nowadays I am living in India, Bodh Gaya. I am doing my PhD. My topics is the actually history of nun in Nepal. The Supreme One, the Buddha, was born in Nepal. Therefore, Nepal is not only locutor famous, but only worldly also very popular about Mount Everest, the top of the world. We can say Nepal is the ancient founder land of the Buddhism. Thousands of princes became arahant in Nepal. 5 years after the Buddha's enlightenment, his father, King Suddhodana, attained an arahantship, and the Queen Prajapati Gautami, she tried many times for his ordination. For her higher ordination. At the last, they got intention the Bhikkhuni Sangha of Nepal. Over 300 years of Buddha's death, during the King Asoka period, 273 to 232 BC, Nepal was ruled by King Suntok, the Kirat king. His son married with King Asoka's daughter Charumati. She contributed Charumati Bihar and established many stupas in village. Later, Mahayana Buddhism became well rooted in Nepal up to 15th century. When the Hinduism occupied the whole India and Nepal, the celebrate monastic tradition had seriously declined in Nepal. The long-standing tradition of permanent ordination for monks and nuns had collapsed. But Buddhism was practiced by lay people only a tradition of ordination young men as well as novice for 4 days, still continues in Mahayana. However, this tradition is not for girls. When 20th century was Theravada Buddhism established again in Nepal, some Nepalese Buddhists were looking for an alternative to the Vajrayana Buddhism, which they were previously following. They came into contact with Mahabodhi Society of India and look ordination, which for women means they devote to observe the 10 precepts. After taking some religious training, when they returned Nepal and tried to spread their realistic message, they faced stark opposition from the Orthodox Hindu government. And for the first 20 years of their mission of suffered harassment and persecution and exile. In 1928, the Prime Minister of Nepal summoned a group of Buddhist women to stop studying religious books, which according to Hinduism was only for male eyes. At that time, a woman named Lakshminani Tuladhar was the leader of this group. At that time, when only 2% of the Nepalese population was literate, she could read not only Newari, but also our national language, Nepali and Hindi. She became a widow in her 20s and lost both her children. Her only solace was to follow the religion. For several years, she took refuge in the mountain among Tibetan monks and spread the Dhamma among the literate women folks of Nepal. In the early 1930s, the first Theravadian monk and nun returned from India and stayed in Kindol, Bihar, near Swayambhu. And Lakshminani Tuladhar and her followers started to hold their ceremony. In 1940s, Lakshminani and her 5 companions visited Kushinagara and met the great monk Chandramuni Mahastabir, a Theravadian missionary monk and member of the Mahabodhi Society of India. Chandramuni Mahastabir managed to send them on to Arkan in the Burma. They stayed there with Burmese nuns and studied the Dhamma. Only when they left, they were ready. They stayed there with Burmese nuns and studied the Dhamma. Only when they felt they were ready did they shave their heads, exchange their robes for pink and orange tilasi dresses, and took 10 precepts. Due to the lack of education and inability of Buddhist books, they were unable to give Dhamma teaching to the lay disciple. They conduct puja and told Jataka stories and counseling regarding family problems. Meanwhile, the position of nuns in the committee became more marginal than the monks. In the 1940s, few nuns were living in the new nunneries, Tanabahal in Patan. Most remained at Kindol, Bihar. The monks and the government subjected them to sallies, gossips, and harassment. Several monks were jealous of the popularity of Lakshminani Tuladhar among the lay followers. They successfully pursued the Guru Ma's into performing for them the work of domestic servants. After the downfall of the anti-Buddhist Rana Regmi, Theravadian Buddhists moved to a representative position within Nepalese society. They started expanding and diversifying their community. To the end, they made great efforts to contract viharas, most in the Kathmandu Valley. More than 50 vihara were constructed during this period, but a few were nunneries. Lakshminani Tulathar, the name Dhammachari, nunnery at Kindle was the largest among these monasteries. This new nunnery soon became a focal point for lay women who flocked there for instruction in the Dhamma. Towards the end of her life, Nun Dhammachari expanded her nunneries, including a Dhamma study center during the rainy season. She died at the age of 1978 and offered this position as Chief Guruma, like a nun of the Theravada community, to my master, Venerable Dhammavati. Venerable Dhammavati's life history give a true picture of the situation of Nepali nun. At the age of 14, she traveled to Burma in search of religious education. Due to her young age, her parents refused to give her permission to go. So she ran away from home. She walked to Burma illegally and arrested. Finally, she got permission to study the Dhamma. For a decade, Dhammavati was only Nepalese nun studying in Burma, but in 1960, she visited Nepal briefly and arranged for some other young women to be trained at Molmin Monastery in Burma. Returning once again to Burma, she passed the 4th level examination and received the position Dhammacharya, the first Nepalese nun to do this. She was invited to remain in Burma, but deciding that her goal was to teach the Dhamma in her own country, she came back in Nepal 1964. In Nepal, Dhammavati straightway set about using her considerable intellectual and organizational skill to indicate a new generation in the Dhamma. According to her, everyone, regardlessly of age, sex, or status, should have access to the Dhamma. It was her belief that in Nepal, the two highest berries of this were illegal, electrically, and the lack of vernacular Buddhist materials. She purchased some land in the courtyard of Seagull Stupa, now we call the Small Swayambhu, and with the help of her old wishes, constructed a small nunnery and named it Dhammaketi Vihar, is the nunnery, where they taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and Buddhism, for which Venerable Dhammavati herself began producing the materials. Due to her relentless efforts, many books and pamphlets were produced. Venerable Dhammavati, meanwhile, had become not only leader in the religious education and ritual invocation, but also the undisputed center for Theravada Buddhist laywomen. But contrast in Dhammakirti, Upasika not only had access to Dhamma training, which in the past had been closed to them, but also with regard to the running of and planning for the temple, they had at least as much input as men. In Nepal at present, there are 60 nunneries. They live alone or in small groups. Nearly half of them are elderly, aged, and working hard to establish the Dhamma, but they need an organization to untie, cooperate, and strengthness to activities of Nepalese non-community. Venerable Dhammavati took part in the first international conference of Buddhist nuns in 1987 and received, all with other nuns, higher ordination as a bhikkhuni at Silai Temple, Los Angeles. These women from the nucleus of the Bhikkhuni Sangha in Nepal. This process is still continuing in Nepal. Thanks for all.
Can you imagine then, on less than 100 years ago, a prime minister tries to stop women from reading Buddhist texts? This is amazing. Thank you very much for your wonderful account of the challenges that Nepalese women had to face and their pioneering efforts, Venerable Vijaya. Our next speaker is Shramanira Molini Rai from Myanmar, and she will speak to us about Buddhist nuns in Myanmar.
First, I would like to respect and worship to Vandana, the Buddha, Dhamma, and all of Sangha. Well, I would like to introduce, I'm from Burma, so everybody very understanding about Burma situation. And I'd like to explain a little bit the history of Myanmar nuns, and a little bit, not very shortly. Myanmar is one of the well-known Buddhist countries. According to ancient history, the first two Buddha's disciples were from Burma. Tapusa and Balika, who got the Buddha's hair in Bodh Gaya. They constructed the stupa with the hair relics inside it. The famous in the wall, Shwetagong, the Golden Pagoda in Rangoon. During the period of King Asoka, he sent the Buddhist missionary to the 9 countries in the world. One of them is Suvarnabhumi, Myanmar among them. Bhikkhuni Sasana was introduced in the 3 countries only, Myanmar being one of them. Unfortunately, we have not any clear record according to Bhikkhuni Sasana history. Later, the Bhikkhuni Sangha changed to ordinary Buddhist nun generation. However, one vital point is that in Myanmar, the nun generation continuously up to now. From the beginning, the Burmese nun Buddhist education is lots of facilities. As a result, majority of nuns are learned in Pali. According to Chinese Tan history, during the 5th century AD, Pyu dynasty in Burma, the nuns' conditions were highly developed. The boys and girls must become novices and nuns when they were 7 years to 20. After that, depended on their choice. That tradition is still alive in Myanmar. Now there are over 100,000 nuns in Myanmar. They are in good studying, in instituting, in practicing, as well in the right path. The Burmese nuns are practicing the way of ancient Buddhist teaching. According to their experience, they keep in their mind this is the only way to free from worldly ignorance. The Myanmar nuns believe that practice, the Brahma Vihara, metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, appreciative joy, and upekha, equanimity. Well, they realize that Buddhism is neither a metaphysical path nor a ritualistic path, neither spectacle nor dogmatic, neither hedonism or hedonism, neither self-mortification nor self-indulgence. It is neither pessimism nor optimism, but realism. It is not extrovert, but introvert. And it is a unique path of enlightenment. The Burmese nuns are understanding on the Buddhism according to Kalama Sutra. Therefore, the Buddhist Dharma is the doctrine of reality. It is a means of deliverance from suffering. Whether the Buddhists arise or not, the Dharma exists from all eternity. This is Buddha's realization, which ever lies hiding from the ignorant eyes. The Burmese nuns believe in Buddhism with the spirit of free inquiry and complete tolerance. It is the teaching of the open mind and the sympathetic heart which lighting and warming the whole universe with its twin ray of wisdom and compassion. Therefore, the Burmese nuns are trying to dwell Visuddhi, purification, and to reach up to Vimukti, deliverance, fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I forgot to mention that Shramanya Molini Rai is a PhD candidate at Magadha University in Bodh Gaya, India. And listening to her thought, I've thought, if in our schools our children were taught metta, karuna, mudita, and upekha, how different our world would be. Thank you. We have a change in program. Our next speaker will not be Tomomi Ito from Japan, but Dr. Chatsuman Kapil Singh, also known as Shramanya Dhammananda. She leads the Bhikkhuni restoration movement in Thailand and was ordained as a Bhikkhuni last year. And she will speak to us about maintaining inner peace. Doctor.
Respect to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And I would like to express my gratitude to Venerable Karma Lecture Somo for allowing me to be here, particularly because I was not originally scheduled for this panel. And I asked Professor Ito that maybe she could change with me because I'm leaving early. So please forgive me for getting a little confused, getting the program a little confused. My topic will be maintaining inner peace, but it is a journey. my personal journey, I would like to give you a little background of what happened in Thailand as a Buddhist country. Thailand claiming to be a Buddhist country, we have 62 million people. That's the number of the population. Out of this 62 million, 95% are Buddhist. At least that's what they claim in their record. Out of these 62 million, 300,000 are monks, and about 10,000 are the white robe machis. We have 2 of them sitting with us here. In the whole country, we have something like 25,000 temples, mostly for monks. We now have 1 school for Machi. One of them will be presenting to you, what's happening in the school of Machi. And then we just start to have 1 college for Machi. Machi means white robe nun in Thailand. Right now, the first batch of their students are doing 3rd year BA under Buddhist University. I would like to take you back 700 years ago when we found the country. Thailand became country 700 years ago. That's about 13th century AD. We accepted Sri Lankan lineage of Buddhism. We declared the country to be following Theravada Buddhism from that time. But before that, we did have Mahayana Buddhist practice in the country. We did not have the lineage of ordained nun, no bhikkhuni. Then 70 years ago, that was exactly the year 1928, we had the first case of ordination of the bhikkhuni in Thailand. But it is rather complicated because the man who actually promoted bhikkhuni ordination, he was involved politically. His name was known as Naringlung. And he caused so much opposition from the government, from the Sangha, as well as from the king. But it so happened that he supported bhikkhuni ordination, and he allowed his 2 daughters to be ordained. The government wanted to fight him back, so to say, try to disrobe the young nuns. There were altogether 8 bhikkhunis ordained from only Bhikkhu Sangha. So these 8 nuns were disrobed, were put in jail, literally put in jail, and literally the robes were taken off from their body. They were just on the floor.